The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to the Fine to Fab Show with Lisa Lieberman-Wang, helping women reclaim their inner peace and power, going from feeling fine to being fab, fabulous, awesome, beautiful, serving to empower you to break through the barriers that weigh you down, to live an authentic life that is healthy, happy, and free. Now, here's Lisa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Lieberman-Wang, your trusted guide on your journey from feeling fine to being fab. If you're committed to breaking through to the barriers that weigh you down to live an even more authentic life that is happy, healthy, and free, you are in the right place. Be sure to be an active member of our community by texting the keyword FINE to FAB to 90210. Follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter at Lisa Lieberman-Wang, and check out our website at www.fine2fab.com. I am really excited to be able to have my special guest here, Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin. But before I introduce you to her, I want you to know that if you'd like to be able to call in and speak to her live, you can do so by calling in 561-422-4365 or Skyping in at W4WN Radio. So at this time, with no further ado, I want to introduce you to my friend. I just want to make sure she's there. Nina, you there?
I am here.
Okay,
great to
awesome.
be here.
Well, I want to tell them a little bit about you first. Nina, you're so extraordinary, but for everybody else, I'm going to give them a little background on you, and then I'll let you share more. But Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin is a psychoanalyst who specializes in emotional eating. She brings insight and hope to men and women struggling with this issue. She's recognized expert on binge eating, has been interviewed for her expertise by the Los Angeles Times, Prevention, Real Simple, Dr. Oz Online, and other publications. She's passionate about sharing a fresh perspective to understanding treatment of disordered eating. She's written several articles on eating problems from psychoanalytic perspective, educating people about why, which is my favorite thing, they turn to food instead of focusing on the behavior itself. Her award-winning blog, Make Peace with Food, was twice named the best eating disorder blog by Healthline. Dr. Nina's podcast, we'll make sure you know how to find her. Win the Diet War with Dr. Nina was named new and noteworthy by iTunes. She's currently writing a book about how to stop binge eating for good. And we have so much to talk about, Nina. I am really happy you're here because we share similar passions in helping people. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, I just gave a bit of a condensed version about you and the service you've been providing for so many people for many years. I'd love you to share with everybody, really why you got into this field and a little bit about yourself.
I would love to. I think it's very important for people to know that not only do I specialize in treating disordered eating, but I understand it from a personal perspective because I've been there. I have been, the entire DSM-5 was me. I went from anorexia to bulimia to binge eating over and over and over again from the time that I was 5 years old. And so I know what it's like to wake up every morning and think, okay, how many calories am I going to have? What can I eat? What can I not eat? How many calories will I burn by doing this or that? I get it. I know what it's like to go to bed every night thinking, okay, was I good? Was I bad? Based on whatever it was that I ate or how I felt about my body. And how I recovered, and again, I was dealing with this in the age of 5 years old. And how I recovered was that I finally went to therapy, but I did not once, in 3 years of going to therapy, I did not once share what was going on with food. My therapist thought I was naturally thin and had no idea how I was torturing myself. But in that 3 years, she helped me change my relationship to myself, helped me identify what was going on, what my conflicts over, needs, wants, wishes, everything. we talked about had to do with my relationship to self and others. And at the end of that 3 years, all of my behaviors were gone, and I wasn't thinking about it at all. And that is what led me to want to do this work, to share my perspective and help people understand that, it's really not about the food, it's about what's going on with you.
Absolutely. And as you know, and a lot of our listeners know, this has been a passion for me and where Find Fab came from, because just like you, my background was the experience I had and got over 20 years ago of hurting myself. And I used to say it's not about the food. It was really the symptom, not the problem. But a lot of people are going for the next diet or program or something that's going to make them feel better, but most people just do not talk about the problem. And the problem, of course, is how we feel about ourselves and the stories we're telling ourselves, as you said, the relationship with ourselves. Now, to even realize it, go back as far as 5 years old, I remember when I was in my dis-ease with myself, not disease, dis-ease. Back then they used to say the average age was 14, and today they say the average age is 8 years old. And it's terrible.
Yeah. And I see people in my practice who have been struggling with this for decades. I mean, I have a number of people in their 50s and 60s even who've been struggling with this for decades, and they've always thought that there was something wrong with them, and only just now realizing there's nothing wrong with them. There's something wrong with the way that they relate to themselves, the way they think about themselves. And by exploring that, they've been able to free themselves, and it's so magnificent to see people kind of be born into their own lives, when they're 55, when they're 65. It's never too late to deal with it.
Right, and there was an article about the fact that they said 50 was the new prime body hate age, and most people even equate disordered eating or challenges with food as being a big disease, not realizing that it's of all ages that are still dealing with it. People that are on a diet this week, starving next week, eating properly, then binging, and it doesn't always have to be as excessive as you and I had both experienced. There's different forms of disordered eating, and it doesn't stop unless the behaviors stop.
Unless the behaviors stop once you realize what's growing those behaviors. If you only focus on what's going on, you miss the whole picture.
Right. So what would be some things that we can share with our listeners to give them ideas of, what would constitute even knowing that there was a challenge?
Well, I think anyone who worries about this, which is to some extent or another, there's a continuum, right? Most people do worry about their weight or what they're eating, but I think people know when there's an issue, when you're thinking about it too much, when the thought of food fills you with this kind of terror and interest at once, there's a problem. So most people know that there's a problem with they're wanting to eat too much or that they are binging, and a lot of people think that they're food addicts, and I have a lot to say on that too, but a lot to say. But it's really identifying what is, like I said, growing the behavior. And that's why I like the analogy of the weed and the root, right? The weed, as everyone who's gardened knows, right? A weed, if you just get rid of it, it grows back. So a weed is whatever's going on with food. And if you just do some gardening and go on a diet, or use willpower, or say you're a food addict and every day I think you said this, Lisa, white knuckling it through the day, that's no way to live. But what is growing that weed is what's out of awareness, but not out of operation. So that's the root. And I like this analogy in particular because you can't see the root, just as you can't really know often what's going on inside that's leading to this behavior. People think they know, and they come to me all the time and they say, I know what my problem is. I don't need to talk about the past. I know this is my problem. But really, they don't know. And I help them figure out what's going on underneath that's making them turn to food as a solution to a problem, by the way. It's not a disease. I don't think it's an addiction. It's a solution. It's a coping mechanism, but it's a solution that hurts you more than it helps.
Right. And the irony about it is that so many people turn to food as a coping mechanism, and I always say it's a temporary solution. I mean, it's a solution to a temporary problem, but actually makes it a permanent problem because it becomes a continuum for them. So talk to me about food addicts. What are your thoughts there? You said you have a lot to say about it. Share some of them.
Very controversially. Yes, if there's an addiction, I think you can use the word addiction in terms of the behavior. You're addicted to and I don't even like to use it, but okay, if you want to call yourself an addict, be addicted to the behavior. I'm addicted to turning to food or away from it or binging and purging, whatever is going on with you and food. I'm addicted to the behavior, but not to the substance. People think that they are addicted to white flour and, sugar and processed foods, and they're powerless. And every single person who's ever come to see me has told me this, that they are a food addict. And, cake is their personal crack. There's just,
their drug of choice.
Yes, their drug of choice. And of course, now there are all these studies that correlate certain foods with increased dopamine levels in our brain, which dopamine is the chemical that mediates pleasure. And so, yes, sugar, fat, white flour, they do activate the release of dopamine, but that doesn't equal an addiction, So the theory around food addiction is that people crave more and more and more to get the same feeling that they used to get with less. But other things cause dopamine to rise in our brains, including a couple of years ago in Neuroscience magazine, they did a study and showed that listening to music caused the same brain reaction as being on cocaine. So, obviously you're not addicted to music. Just because it has the same brain activity doesn't mean it's an addiction. And we're not just mindless, brainless people who are chasing our biology. We have minds. And our minds can be very creative in terms of protecting us from pain, and that's part of why we learn to turn to food. But we have minds as well as brains, and when you harness the power of your mind, you can really deal with the root issue of that seems to be causing what feels like an addiction.
Right, and a lot of people will turn around, and you said it too, like they can't stop or they can't help it, or they make their identity about being addicted or an addict, or it's not their fault. They take the blame completely off themselves as if they have no control over this. Right.
And it's not even about control. It's about really figuring out, what's going on inside. And can I share an example with you? I have kind of a good example of that.
Awesome.
So this is, let me call my patient Kathleen, not her name, but we'll call her Kathleen. She said she was a food addict. She knew why she binged. She knew what her problem was. And she said she was lonely and she filled up on food instead of people, and that she had done all this work in therapy with, for the last 30 years, and she knew people were unpredictable and unreliable and food was consistent, and that's why she turned to it, and that's why she was a food addict as well, that reason plus the addiction. And I said, well, if you're lonely, the solution to loneliness is having people over, going out and seeing people and relating to them and having fulfilling relationships. And she said, well, no, she wasn't sure that she could have friends because they might judge her, and she couldn't have people over anyway because she never bought furniture for her house. And why didn't she buy furniture for her house that she lived in for 5 years? Well, what if she made the wrong choice? And what if she did it wrong? And what if she chose the wrong paint? And what if she chose the wrong furniture? And it on and on. And so, as we dug a little deeper, Kathleen had very nice parents. It's not always, there's a joke in psychoanalysis, right? If it's not one thing, it's your mother. It's not always your
not another, it's your mother, okay. Yeah.
Actually, she had very loving, lovely parents who worked a lot. She was raised in part by a very critical grandmother who was always saying, you can't do that, you're going to do that wrong, you did that wrong. Very, very critical. Kathleen internalize that relationship. So although her grandmother was long dead, she was very much alive in Kathleen's mind. And now Kathleen was criticizing herself, by saying, you can't, this is how she talked, oh, you can't do that, or you're going to do that wrong. She didn't say, I'm going to do it wrong. She said, you're going to do it wrong. So her problem was not loneliness. Her problem was this identification with her grandmother's view of her. And when she resolved that, which I like to call it kind of a psychological exorcism, when she really got her grandmother's voice out of her mind, she was able to make decisions, have people over, trust that other people wouldn't criticize her, and she was able to connect and have fulfilling relationships with people. And when she did that, everything changed with food too.
Wow. And you think about how many times people are listening to an inner voice, but it's actually someone else's voice that they're replaying the same story of and owning that identity for.
Exactly. And you know how you recognize when it's someone else's voice? By how you talk to yourself. Like with Kathleen, she would literally say something like this: well, I want to get furniture for my house, but then I think, you're going to do it wrong. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to screw it up somehow. So she went from talking about herself in first person, I, to talking about herself in second person, you. When you talk to yourself in second person, the chances are high that you are talking to yourself in someone else's voice.
Wow. And I think that's going to be really big for our listeners now to hear, because so many times you hear people telling stories and they're not even aware of what they're saying, let alone how they're saying it. To become aware of, is it you saying it, or is this something you heard as a tape? I mean, 55% of our beliefs and the stories we've created were given to us by the guardians that raised us. So it's their stories that we're holding on to, and we just keep replaying it over and over again. Recognizing it is the big part here.
And it doesn't even have to be a criticism. Like, for instance, I was at the park the other day. I see a lot at the park. I was with my 5-year-old, and this little kid fell and skinned his knee, and he was with his dad, and he went over and he's like, oh, I skinned my knee, it's bleeding. He was, because it hurts, right? And the dad goes, oh, it's not so bad. You're okay. And I thought, wow, that seems like such an innocuous exchange. Like, the dad was really trying to make him feel better. But inadvertently, that dad was dismissing that little boy's pain. And when that happens enough, kids learn to dismiss their physical pain and their emotional pain. So they respond to themselves like, all right, it's not that bad. Like, I don't really feel this. But they do.
What would have been a more appropriate answer that would really help this little boy grow up in a healthier environment, we'll use?
Saying, wow, that does look like it hurts. Yeah, I bet that hurt. We're going to clean it up and it's going to be okay, but yeah, I bet that stings.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledging and validating. And then you translate that to emotions, right? If you say, the kids were mean to me at school, oh, ignore them. You're wonderful. Ignore them. Well, that doesn't help. But if you say, oh, they were mean to you at school, that must have really hurt your feelings, that gives the kid the idea that it's okay to have these feelings and then to process them. And those are the messages that we get as children that we then bring with us into adulthood and the rest of our lives. And I do want to say just one thing, because a lot of people say, well, I don't want to blame my parents. And I don't believe in blame, but I do believe in explain. So blame says, they did this to me and that's why I'm the way I am. Boo-hoo. That doesn't get you anywhere. But saying, you know what, there were dynamics in the house, these things happened, these were the messages I got, and they affected me, and I'm recognizing that in the service of change, that's explain.
Absolutely. I like that blame versus explain, and that's an important piece. It's just understanding the meaning we gave it at that time, but also how we can use it today. But that acknowledge and validate is important. I think a lot of people today, it's become so conditioned to be numb that when something happens, we don't acknowledge it, let alone validate that it happened. We just have to move forward and move past it, which is kind of putting a Band-Aid on a situation instead of feeling it for the moment and then moving on. Now, I'm a big proponent of moving on because in my life there's been plenty of things that happened to me that most people would have stopped and not had any success and beat themselves up after for years and years and years. And I chose just to move on and said, okay, it happened, and what do I do now? And I always had that principle when I was growing up, which worked for me, where somebody else might say, well, your pain was dismissed, and it was, but it actually was a good thing for me because it didn't let me stay there. So it really becomes how people use situations.
And I'm in favor of moving on, too, and letting go of the past. But like in my example with Kathleen, often the past is not past. It's sort of alive and in the present. And you're just repeating the past unbeknownst to yourself. And when you can say, you know what, I'm doing to myself sort of what was done to me, or I'm giving myself the messages that were given to me, and I recognize this and I'm going to stop, then you can stop. Then you can work through it and stop and move on and be free.
That's
it's
awesome.
all about moving on, right?
Absolutely. And we need to be able to do that. And, what would be some of the things, like say someone is struggling right now and they're finding that they don't even know what the conversations are, things are happening in their lives, and their go-to is food. What would be some of the suggestions you'd give them as some of the first things to start doing?
Well, if something is, as I said, it's out of awareness but not out of operation, what do you do if you can't see the root and you don't know what it is, right? So one of the things that I tell people is start with the food that you're actually choosing, because embedded in that is probably what you really need. Like, now this is totally anecdotal and absolutely not scientific, but I have found it to be like pretty much spot on true for everybody in my practice. So if you are drawn to, say, smooth textures like ice cream or pudding or, that kind of thing, then maybe you're in need of, that's correlated with the need for comfort. People who are more pulled towards chewy things, or, bread or cake or muffins, things like that, that's often correlated with filling a void, dealing with a deep loneliness and emptiness and disconnection from people. And crunchy food like, chips and pretzels and even apples, anything that crunches, that's correlated with anger. So if you can figure out, well, and you might say, well, it's all of the above, but generally there's just one of those types of food that people are more drawn to than others, and that's their key. Like, okay, maybe I need to think about that this is, how else do I comfort myself? Or what is the void that I'm trying to fill? Or what am I angry about? Because a lot of people say, oh, I can't get angry at anyone else. Oh, that would be bad. I'd have an anger management class, but then I need an anger management class. But then they have no problem turning that anger on themselves. Like, I can't be angry, but boy, am I mad at myself. I ate blah, blah, blah. I can't believe I did that, right? So that's one way to do it.
I love that analogy. We're just starting with the food, because what a great question is where is it coming from? What is it, or what am I angry about? Or even that analysis of the difference between textures is interesting, and I could think of a couple of people, and I'm saying that's right, spot on, very easily spot on. So
yeah. So that's a good place to start. And the other place is to look at what I call body language, but not in the way that it's normally thought of. Body language is the way that we talk about our bodies, which gives expression to emotional conflicts. Like people who get headaches, or they say, I ate so much, or they say, I ate so much my stomach hurt. Well, sometimes that could be turning emotional pain into physical pain. Or, oh, I can't think about dating, gives me a headache. Well, so thoughts of dating are so scary and upsetting that I'm in pain. things like that. I'm in the mood for ice cream. I need comfort. So really looking at the food that you go to and the way that you think about your body and think about the way you express needs and wants in a physical way can really shed light on what the unmet emotional need is or conflict.
Right. And a lot of people will turn to the food as, I don't feel good, I just want to have this, or, whatever the case is, or that going into that mode. I can see that happening often, and what areas they focus on. Very common. My father always told me that he had headaches and dark chocolate helped. So he ate dark chocolate all the time. So that was his way of getting his candy in.
Yeah, and a lot of people say to me, well, why food? Why do I turn to food? More than one person has said, why can't I be a crack addict? At least then I'd be thin, which is, so
crazy.
Sad.
Yeah.
Really? That's so important to you? It's sad. It's sad, but as human beings, our first experience of love is being fed. Whether through breast or bottle, it's being fed. When a baby cries and her mother or father feeds her, that baby experiences hunger being satisfied while at the same time feeling so connected to another person who's, being held in a secure, loving way. So the experience of being fed becomes early on an experience of being loved. So when you think of it this way, turning to food is an attempt, very unconsciously. It's not like you don't think this is what's going on, but it's unconscious. It's an attempt to find that kind of peaceful, blissful serenity and connection of infancy. It's trying to find what has been lost, where safety and love and satisfaction are bound up in feeding. So in turning to food, you're trying to help yourself in some way to cope and to feel that relatedness as well as that comfort.
And the challenge is it's such an accepted thing, whether it be to be around people and breaking bread together, whether it be sharing food or coming over, let's eat, and sharing even what, the sweets and the other stuff that we associate with. This is what we're supposed to do, is that association of being together and the bonding that happens with it. And I know for me, it was always a comfort. Food was always about comfort and love and connection, and it gave me plenty of uncertainty. There were so many things to do that it met a lot of my needs. And I'm with you is when I started realizing what I really wanted, which was love, and not necessarily from food, but for myself and from others. It totally changed everything. What we're going to be doing is, in a moment, we're going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to be with Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin, and you can ask any questions if you'd like to call in or Skype in at W4WN Radio. You can do that. See where you're at. Maybe you have a question that you've been thinking about for a while, and here's a safe and wonderful avenue to be able to get those questions answered. So at this moment, we're going to go to break and just be with us. We'll be back shortly.
Are you looking to make peace with food? Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin is a psychoanalyst specializing in the treatment of emotional eating and binge eating. She authors an award-winning blog, Make Peace with Food, and hosts the popular podcast, Win the Diet War, on iTunes. It's time to take control of your food and your life. If you're fed up with dieting and looking for a new approach, Dr. Nina can help. Learn more at winthedietwar.com and lose weight without dieting. That's www.winthedietwar.com.
If you've always wanted someone to connect with on your path to a happy, healthy you, I've got great news. In her #1 best-selling book, Find to Fab, 7 Secrets of a Successful Woman's Journey Away from Depression, Disordered Eating, and Self-Sabotage, Lisa Lieberman-Wang shares how you can experience your breakthrough just as she did. Start living an authentic life without blame, shame, or years of therapy. Buy now at findtofab.com.
Feeling tired and achy? Frustrated with allergies? Stress causing you high blood pressure? If you're ready to feel better, have more energy, maintain healthy cholesterol levels, joint flexibility and circulation, looking to reduce inflammation, support healthy glucose levels and sinus relief, plus so much more, Isotonics OPC3 is a food supplement made from a combination of bilberry, grapeseed, red wine, and pine bark extracts, and citrus extract bioflavonoids, all found to be powerful antioxidants. Oligomeric proanthocyanins, OPCs, are bioflavonoids found in fruit, vegetables, and certain tree barks that provide exceptional nutritional benefits to the human body. Studies have shown OPCs to be up to 20 times more powerful than vitamin C and 50 times more powerful than vitamin E in neutralizing free radicals. Isotonics is delivered in an isotonic solution, which means that the body has less work to do in obtaining maximum absorption, as you can drink your vitamins. No pills, binders, or fillers. Buy now at www.amillionproducts.com. Isotonics OPC3.
Welcome back. We are here with Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin. I am Lisa Lieberman-Wang, your trusted guide from feeling fine to being fab. And we've just been talking about challenges with disordered eating and really more so the self-love that we don't give ourselves, and some incredible tips, which I actually absolutely loved, about blame versus explain, and understanding that we need to acknowledge and validate ourselves as well as our children, that this is not something that just started for us. This is something that we've had learned behaviors and we can actually change the next generation. Nina, I wanted to talk to you about what you would suggest people do, because I know everybody I know, at least women, are always looking for the next diet phase or craze and thinking that that's going to be the answer to their problems. And I know the answer is not about diet, but what would be your take on it, or suggestion for them to be able to stop these yo-yo diets and everything and start taking care of the real challenge?
You know, I have a magic wand in my office. At least it looks like a magic wand. I've been told that it works just very slowly. And what I like to say is, look, if I wave my magic wand over you, and I could take away all of this body dissatisfaction, I could heal your relationship to yourself and food, and I could take away all of your negative self-talk about your weight and about food, and you can't think about any of that. I'm just going to wipe it out of your mind. What would you be thinking about? And, you know, because all these thoughts serve as distractions from deeper fears and conflicts. And when you can get to that and work through those concerns, you no longer need to focus on dieting and weight and all of that to cope with whatever it is that's so uncomfortable or unbearable. So if all thoughts of food, weight, calories, fat grams, or anything connected with disordered eating were completely blocked out of your mind, you know, what would you think about? And a lot of times I hear, I don't know.
That's what I was thinking you're going to hear. I'm wondering, I wanted to ask what were some of the answers, because I'm thinking they'd say, I don't know. That's all that fills their mind.
So I'll give a little help. So there are maybe 4 themes that people often have in their lives. One is fear of abandonment. You know, if they're not thinking about all this food stuff, maybe they'd be afraid that others would leave them, that they'd be alone, fear that, you know, they're going to be just on their own again, or on their own in some way, and that's just too painful to contemplate. Another concern is fear of rejection, that people will judge you, they won't like you, that kind of thing. Another category is fear of punishment. You're going to get in trouble, you're going to get punished in some way, something like that. And then the last one is guilt. Well, it's really 2. Guilt and shame. Guilt about something that you've done or haven't done now or sometime in the future. And often, of course, guilt can lead to anxiety, which is a feeling then that takes over. So if I do something wrong, then people are going to abandon, reject, or punish me. Guilt, and the other one is shame. Now, guilt is about what you're doing or not doing. People feel guilty for things that they're doing or not doing. Shame is a sense that there's something wrong with them. So guilt sounds like, I've done something really bad. I've done something really wrong. And shame is there's something really bad and wrong about me. So these are kind of heavy-duty themes and heavy-duty. So I just realized that my poor choice of description, but they're intense. And maybe there's a reason heavy-duty, right? It's intense. It's weighty, right? When you can get your mind away from all of these body issues and weight and get your mind on what is really bothering you in that root, at the core, then you have a chance of working through it. Where did this come from? How long have you felt this way? What have you experienced? What's the first time you remembered feeling this way? So that would be one thing. Think the magic wand. Well, where does it take you?
And I'm sure a lot of people wish they had this magic wand that would get rid of all those feelings they have about their body. I think it's interesting where I've had women I've worked with that are the same weight now as they were when they started working with me, because they really had the ideal body weight for their size and shape and everything else, but they didn't like their body. They weren't skinny enough, pretty enough, smart enough, all those things that came with it. But once we got rid of some of those other challenges that just made them focus on what was wrong with their body, all of a sudden all that was okay. And I always look at it as the weight didn't change. What it is it was a weight lifted off their head that made them think there was a problem, but there wasn't a problem. And you start at the very beginning is there's nothing wrong with them. There are no problems. We're just creating them. It always goes back to that.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great reminder that it's not really the weight. It's your perception of it and your interpretation of it and how you're using it in your life to distract yourself from other things. And often people have this wish, really, that if they can lose weight, they're going to lose all the things about themselves that they don't like. Or if they lose weight, they can control other people. He doesn't like me now, but if I just lose 20 pounds, then he's going to like me. So you give yourself this illusion that by changing your weight, you can change the way other people feel about you. You can change whether you're going to get a good job or a husband. It's all an illusion. Your weight is just your weight. It's not your lovability, your likability.
Absolutely. It's funny because when we even think about our own friends and the people we love, we don't judge them by how much they weigh, whether we love them or not, but the rules that a lot of people put on themselves are not the same. So they have a different scale for themselves than they do for others. And it always goes back, I like how you said that. They lose weight, it's going to actually change how people like them, and it's going to really change how they like them, they think. I told everybody to throw out their scales. To me, it was the worst fortune teller I ever had.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. I've had fortune tellers I liked, but that wasn't the one. I mean, it made or broke my day, and it was funny, and I saw it happen when I married my husband. He didn't understand that the scale wasn't always my friend, so he thought it'd be cool to get one of these Tanita scales and tell you your body mass and how old you were. The piece I like about the scales, it tells me that my body weight and my age, that I'm half my age, that I like as far as in my health. I love that part. I don't even care about the number and how much I weigh. I want to know how old I am based on the scale. But it's so funny. He thought the scale would be great, and I'm sitting there. I feel really great. Everything is wonderful. I think I look good. And then I get on the scale, and the number's bad. And I've actually been free of the obsession for almost 20 years now. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it's a bad number. And I was like, really? You're going to go there right now? So I don't go there. I choose not to, but I think it's funny how most people do get caught up in that. And if when I lose weight, everything will be okay. And I don't know many women who don't want to lose 5 or 10 pounds or more. So,
right, it's an illusion. It's an illusion of control, and then to give up the illusion means to recognize, like, you do not have omnipotent control over your whole universe. That if you lose weight, that's not the magic thing that's going to make your life change. You got to make your life change. If you want your life to change, you got to do it in other ways, and maybe your life doesn't have to change, and maybe there's nothing wrong with you, and maybe it's all about self-acceptance rather than this toxic, judgmental, critical, stance that women take against their own bodies and diminishes them. We become just bodies instead of people who are fabulous, awesome, and beautiful in spirit.
Absolutely. It's funny because you're saying that, and I had another beautiful woman who literally was so unhappy with everything and then realized what you just said a moment ago, literally, that she already had everything she wanted. She just didn't see it. And when she saw it, it was like the whole weight of the world was lifted off her shoulders. Instead of waiting to get there, she already had it and she just never saw it. How many women and men do we have like that already have everything they want, but they're too busy putting these masks on thinking that they haven't gotten there yet?
And sometimes it's about fear of being too happy. I find a lot of times people are actually afraid that if they get to that place where they feel good about themselves and they accept themselves, that the rug's going to be swept out from underneath them. Something bad's going to happen if they let themselves feel too good. And that's something to consider too. What's going to happen when you get where you want to go? Because generally people get where they want to go and then they change then the goal becomes further. They just make it's good to make goals, but it's when you're never good enough because you haven't reached whatever goal, whether it's on the scale or what have you, then you're never going to be happy. But what happens if you're happy? What are you really afraid of? There's fear of success as well as fear of failure.
Yeah, and a lot of times what happens is we stay in I call it the diners and whiners club, and people will stay with other people that are complaining about the same thing, and as soon as you start making changes, you'll start getting conflicts from those people because you're making the change they're not ready to make yet. So that also is part of feeling too good, like you're feeling good about yourself, you're choosing to take care of yourself, food's not the focus anymore, it's more about life and things you want, that not necessarily to fill you, and then you get slack from other people who might not like your change.
Yes, that's very true. And in fact, often people who deal with food can be people pleasers, and they sacrifice themselves but take care of the needs of others. Not everybody, but a lot of people can probably relate to that. And when they start taking care of themselves and setting limits and making boundaries, people who are used to you being there for them no matter what, you're the all-giving person, suddenly you want something back or you say no, those people don't like it. And, so inevitably things shift and change, but ultimately you've got to remember that you're going to have the right people in your life. And if you're surrounded by diners and whiners, well, there's a whole other class of people out there that maybe you have yet to meet. And maybe those diners and whiners can change with you. That would be best.
I agree. Let's take them all out of the diner. And then do some things that are more fun and have to do with physical and movement and laughter. Maybe we can take them dancing instead. We'll change the whole model.
Make the diners and whiners into dancers and
prancers.
Dancers and prancers, writers.
Absolutely.
Dancers and writers.
Nina, I know that even part of your personal struggles before you took a hold of everything and went the direction you did as a doctor to serve people at a different level, you had noticed there were dangers that came from the eating and throwing up and other things. I don't think people really understand the severity of what disordered eating or eating disorders can do and the byproducts. Now, we only have literally a couple minutes before we're going to close, but I just want you to share with people what they have to look for, where the danger points are. This time went so fast, and then we'll share with them how to reach you, okay?
Absolutely. I think people think eating disorders being deadly. They think of anorexia, which of course is very deadly, but being overweight or obese has all kinds of medical issues attached to that, from hypertension, heart disease. You're in all of the dangers that come from overweight that does have to do with disordered eating. And bulimia can be very, very dangerous. I think the turning moment for me was when I was purging. I hope this isn't too graphic, but I threw up blood. And I remember thinking, what if I die all because I couldn't let myself have more than 800 calories a day, or because I committed the crime, quote unquote, of eating ice cream? What a waste. And I realized I could die from this. And this is your life, this is your health, this is your physical health, this is your happiness, and it needs your attention.
And that's really the thing that people need to realize, is that whether it be because of an act that you're doing to yourself, or it's obesity that's going to put damage on your heart, your body, your joints, and other things, that all these really need to be looked at. And the fact is, it all goes back to what you said earlier. It's about the self-acceptance and self-love. And I want people to know how to follow you, so that they can learn more. You have an incredible blog. You're writing on many different blogs, but give them the information so they'll find you. And I'll also make sure it's available on the findtofab.com blog as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And anyone who's interested can find me on my website, which is winthedietwar.com. And you can reach my podcast and my blog through that website. You can also find Win the Diet War on iTunes. You can find me on Facebook, Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin, and on Twitter at Win the Diet War.
And thank you. And Nina, you are incredible. I really wish we had more time together. I want to just quote something that you had wrote for me, and I love this. You said, "It's okay to be human. Needs aren't needy, and feelings aren't weak." And I think that's such a strong statement, because a lot of people feel like they can't feel and that they're needy. And do you want to just say something to that before we go?
Feelings are natural human reactions to situations. They don't define your character. They don't mean that there's something wrong with you. If you're angry, you're not an angry person. If you're sad, you're not a depressed person. You are a person who is reacting to something going on, and that is okay. And your feelings need your attention, not your condemnation. Remember that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, the thing that we also want to say is, I always said that, these are things we're doing when I'm doing anger or doing depressed or something. It's not something that I am, because I don't need to own it. It's an action, and I don't take that responsibility to think that it has to even last very long. So for all of our listeners, I'm excited that I had Dr. Nina here with us. You'll be able to listen to this again, share it with your friends. Remember to text us at FIND2FAB at 90210. Put FIND to FAB and text in the phone number 90210. And also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn at Lisa Lieberman-Wang. And we will be with you next Wednesday at 3 with another awesome guest. And have a fabulous, awesome, beautiful day.
This is your life talking to you. Yes, I know it's unusual. You think that you are just living your life, but now here I am. I just had to speak up if you and I are going to have the best. Yes, you've had some success with me, but you know things could be better. I know how tough it's been to fight depression and the habits that lead you to self-sabotage and disordered eating. I applaud you for all the professional and self-help remedies that you have tried so far. But let's face it, they haven't worked. But it's not your fault. I know. I was there, remember? It's time that you listen to me for a change. I want you to go to www.findtofabshow.com and find out how best-selling author Lisa Lieberman-Wang can make me your life fabulous. Right now, Lisa is offering a 10-week transformational program for us. Mention the show and we'll get a really great discount. Hey, I'd go online and do it for us, but I don't have any fingers. So go ahead and go to www.findtofabshow.com and let's make the changes we need today so we can have a better tomorrow.